Get that woman out of my training bay now. The shout ricocheted through the concrete hall like a misfired round, snapping heads toward the doorway where Major Donovan Pierce stood, jaw tight, eyes burning with the kind of authority that made even seasoned instructors straighten their backs. The tension hit hard and fast, a crack in the air that seemed to rearrange the room itself. But before the murmurs could swell, before anyone could decide whether they were witnessing a reprimand or the beginning of something bigger, the narrator's voice cut in quietly, almost gently. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to Hero Tales by Jacob so you never miss these fascinating tales of courage. And let us know in the comments where you're watching today. The words settled like a soft counterpoint to the tension in the room. Then the story resumed its steady, relentless pull. Sergeant Emily Carter didn't move. She simply stood beside the open simulator pod, one boot resting on the edge of the metal platform, her expression unreadable beneath the fluorescent lights. She was used to scenes like this, used to whispers, used to side glances, used to being in places where people believed she didn't belong. But today the weight of it pressed deeper, threading into her pulse. The air smelled of cold circuitry, hydraulic oil, and the faint ozone of overheated wires. Screens flickered across the walls, casting ghost-like reflections across the polished floor of the Air Combat Training Wing at Maxwell Base, Colorado. Emily didn't flinch, didn't drop her gaze, didn't apologize. She had learned years ago that apologies only fed the wolves. Major Pierce, tall and rigid, stepped forward, boots hitting the floor with sharp authority. This bay is restricted to certified combat trainees, he said. Not analysts. Not tech operators. And definitely not someone who hasn't earned the right to stand here. The room felt colder suddenly. A few trainees exchanged smirks, some subtle, some not so subtle. Emily caught every expression without letting her eyes acknowledge any of them. Technically, Pierce wasn't wrong. She was an intelligence sergeant, a signal specialist, someone whose skill lived inside waveforms and encrypted frequencies, not inside cockpits or firing lines. But that didn't matter. Not today. Not here. Because today wasn't about qualifications. Today was about truth. Her voice came out calm, almost slow. I'm here under direct authorization from Colonel Avery Holt. That name sliced through the murmuring like a blade. Even Pierce hesitated. For a heartbeat the tension shifted, not disappearing, but reshaping itself. He took one step closer. Authorization for what, Sergeant? Emily reached into her uniform pocket, fingers brushing the worn notebook she always carried, her brother's notebook. The one thing she refused to let go of. But she didn't take it out. Not yet. Instead, she handed Pierce a folded slip of paper, the official stamp unmistakable under the overhead lights. He scanned it, jaw tightening even more, as if the words themselves tasted bitter in his mouth. You want access to the crash analysis simulation? He asked. I need it, she corrected softly. A long silence stretched between them. Heavy. Loaded. But he couldn't refuse, not with Holt's signature sitting in his palm like a sealed verdict. He gave a curt nod toward the technicians. Fine. She stays. But don't expect anyone to do you favors in here. Emily didn't bother responding. She stepped into the simulator bay fully now, the hum of machinery vibrating beneath her feet, the glass pod door sliding open like the mouth of something ancient and meticulous. She could feel eyes trailing her, some curious, some dismissive, some openly doubtful. None of them mattered. Because 6 months ago, her brother, Captain Aaron Carter, one of the Air Force's sharpest reconnaissance pilots, had died in what the official report called a mechanical malfunction during descent. A clean explanation. A neat one. Too neat. But the frequency she intercepted that night, the one not listed in any mission log, the one whispering through static like a faint distress call, told another story. A buried one. A wrong one. Ever since the memorial ceremony, the ache of unanswered questions had followed her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. And though people praised her strength, her discipline, her composure, none of them knew the truth boiling beneath the surface. None of them heard the echo she still couldn't shake from her memory. A single distorted voice threading through noise. Carter, aboard. Repeat, aboard. Frequency compromised. Then silence. The simulator hissed as it powered up, screens lighting around her. The training bay grew dimmer, quieter. The technicians typed quickly, loading the archived mission parameters she had requested. Pierce crossed his arms, watching her with the controlled irritation of a man forced to tolerate what he didn't respect. Emily placed a hand on the cold railing of the cockpit mock-up, steadying herself. Her breathing slowed, not from fear, but from the razor-sharp focus that always came before she walked into something she couldn't turn back from. This was the moment she had been pushing toward for months. The moment she finally stepped out of the shadows of intercepted logs and background analysis and into the place her brother last occupied. Into the machine, into the flight path, into the truth. She lowered herself into the seat. The harness clicked shut. A technician gave her a hesitant nod, waiting for her confirmation. "Start recording all deviations," she said. "Even the ones that look like noise." "Ma'am, that'll overload the do it." Her tone left no room for argument. The technician swallowed, then complied. The pod sealed. Darkness for one breath. Then the world around her flooded alive. Instrument panels glowing, alarms ready to be triggered, atmospheric data scrolling like a heartbeat. The simulation rewound to the exact moment Aaron's final flight began to fall apart. Emily's fingers hovered above the controls, trembling only slightly. This was no longer training. This was excavation. Slowly, quietly, the simulation began to recreate the descent. Altitude dropping, wind shear shifting, telemetry aligning. Her pulse matched the steady hum of the engines. Then there, a flicker in the corner of the display, a spike on a frequency that should not exist. Emily's breath caught. She leaned closer. The voice, the same fractured whisper she remembered. It bled through the speakers with chilling clarity. Not a malfunction, not interference, a transmission, a warning. And suddenly, everything inside her clicked into place. The doubt, the tension, the unspoken fear that the truth was not just buried, but deliberately silenced. Her hands tightened on the controls. Whatever happened to her brother wasn't an accident. It was a message, and she was finally hearing it. The simulator door hissed open before the lights had finished cycling down, spilling Emily back into the cold, cavernous training bay. She didn't stand immediately. For a long moment she remained seated, fingers still curled around the harness, as if the cockpit were the only thing keeping her from collapsing under the weight of what she had just heard. The echo of that fragmented transmission threaded through her mind, clearer now than it had ever been in the months since Aaron's death. It clung to her, refusing to fade. When she finally stepped out, the technicians were watching her with something between curiosity and unease. Major Pierce stood farther back, arms folded tightly, expression unreadable. He had expected her to fail the simulation, to be overwhelmed, to retreat. Instead, she stepped down onto the concrete like someone who had just found the missing corner of a map, and now intended to uncover the entire path. "Run it again," Emily said. Pierce blinked. "Sergeant, that sim was designed for pilot trainees. You're not certified to run it again." There was nothing aggressive in her voice, nothing theatrical, just quiet conviction. It was the kind of tone that made people pause before deciding whether to challenge it. Pierce hesitated, jaw locking, but he finally jerked his head at the technicians. "Give her the parameters," he muttered. "But she's not touching the advanced levels. And she's done after this cycle." Emily didn't argue. She stepped back into the pod as the technicians rebooted the system. But as the controls lit up again, something inside her shifted. Not panic, not confusion, a colder, quieter certainty. The frequency spike she saw wasn't environmental. It wasn't random. Someone had activated an unsecured channel mid-flight, one not authorized on Aaron's mission profile. And whoever did it had spoken directly to him. The simulator's voice announced, "Ready for reinitialization." Emily braced herself. "Start." The second run felt different, not because the data changed, but because she was no longer looking for patterns. She was hunting them. Her focus sharpened until the outside world faded completely. Altitude logs, signal timestamps, noise signatures fluctuating half a decimal off their expected markers. She tracked each anomaly with precise attention, her breath syncing with the rhythmic vibration of the simulated engines. Then, another spike. This one weaker, but still present. She tapped the console, paused it, zoomed in. The waveform trembled on the screen, a narrow band of interference threading through the normal telemetry. And there it was again, that faint, broken whisper trying to push through static. Emily swallowed hard, pulse tightening. She replayed the audio 3 times, isolating it, cleaning it, adjusting the pitch manually. The voice was muffled, distorted, but the cadence, the urgency. It was unmistakably human. And it wasn't her brother. When the simulation ended, she stepped out again, her boots hitting the floor with sudden heaviness. The room looked the same, machines humming, screens flickering, trainees whispering, but she felt the shift inside her like a tectonic plate sliding into a new position. Pierce approached, irritation already forming on his face. Satisfied? She didn't bother answering. I need access to the raw mission logs from Flight Echo 7. Not the redacted set. The real logs. Pierce laughed under his breath. Those are sealed. I know. Then you also know you're not getting anywhere near them. Intel sergeants don't get that kind of clearance. Hell, most officers don't. Emily's expression didn't change. Colonel Holt can override it. Pierce's eyes narrowed. He won't. He already did once. His jaw ticked. A muscle in his cheek pulsed. For a moment he looked like he wanted to say something harsher, something cutting, but he held it in. Instead, he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. You're digging into something that's above your pay grade. Let it go, Sergeant. You're not the first grieving sibling who thinks they've found a mystery where there isn't one. She stared back at him, steady and unyielding. No, I'm the one who found what everyone else missed. The silence between them thickened. Pierce exhaled sharply and stepped back. You have 10 minutes to clear out. I want this bay reset. Emily nodded once. She turned away, gripping the railing of the simulator as she gathered her thoughts. Her mind raced, not with panic, but with calculations. Connections. A direction forming from fragments she had been piecing together for months. And beneath it all, the old guilt flickered. The guilt of not answering Aaron's last call. The guilt of believing the official report. The guilt of letting 6 months pass while her brother's final moments were twisted into something clean and convenient. She stepped toward the exit, her boots echoing through the bay. But before she reached the door, it slid open from the outside. Colonel Avery Holt entered. The room straightened instantly. Even Pierce stiffened. Holt was not a man who needed volume to command authority. His presence alone drew silence. Silver hair cut close, uniform crisp, eyes sharp with the kind of clarity only war and age could sharpen without dulling the mind. He scanned the bay quickly, assessing the tension in seconds. Then his gaze landed on Emily. Sergeant Carter, he said. Not a question, not a greeting. A summons. Emily stepped forward. Sir. Pierce opened his mouth, likely to mention the unauthorized simulation rerun, but Holt didn't give him the chance. I need a word, Holt said simply. Then he turned and walked out. Emily followed him down the hallway, every step echoing with questions she hadn't yet formed. Holt didn't speak until they reached an empty briefing room. He closed the door behind them. Then he faced her with the kind of expression that made Emily's stomach tighten. You found something, he said. It wasn't a question. Emily's pulse quickened. Yes, sir. Holt nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had suspected all along. What you heard, he said quietly, was not part of the official mission recording. Emily's breath hitched. Then you knew. I knew there were inconsistencies, Holt replied. I didn't know you would be the one to uncover them. Emily's throat tightened. Sir, what really happened to my brother? Holt's eyes softened, not with pity, but with a gravity that felt heavier than any sympathy. That, he said, is what we're going to find out. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. But you need to understand something before we continue. Emily held his gaze. Whatever this is, Holt said, it didn't start with Aaron's last flight. A chill ran down her spine. It started long before that. He took a slow breath. And if you keep digging, you may not like where it leads. The room fell silent. Emily didn't blink. I'm not stopping. Holt nodded once. Then the next phase begins now. He handed her a sealed envelope, military grade, double-stamped. Her fingers tightened around it. Inside, Holt said, are the coordinates to the one place Aaron visited before his final mission. A place that was never included in the official report. Emily's heart began to pound. Holt's voice lowered. You're about to learn, he said, why someone wanted the truth buried with him. The envelope felt heavier than paper should, like its weight came not from what it contained, but from the consequences waiting to unravel the moment Emily opened it. Holt didn't wait for her to speak. He simply stepped back, his posture rigid, his expression marked by something that almost resembled regret. She slid a thumb beneath the seal. The glue cracked softly in the quiet briefing room. Inside was a single sheet, folded twice, and a small metallic drive no larger than her thumbnail. She recognized the type immediately, classified level encryption, the kind usually reserved for covert operations and intelligence black sites. Her pulse steadied, not from calm, but from resolve. "What's on the drive?" she asked. Holt met her eyes. A fragment of the raw satellite telemetry from the night of Aaron's crash. It was never uploaded into the central archive. Why not? Because if it had been, Holt replied, the official report wouldn't have survived the first review. A slow breath slipped from Emily's chest. She unfolded the paper next. Coordinates. A pair of numbers in the Colorado Rockies. Remote, high elevation, miles from any marked base or training route. No labels. No description. Just a location. Aaron flew there, she whispered. He was diverted, Holt corrected. 3 days before his final mission. The reroute order wasn't filed through our chain of command. Someone outside the standard channels issued it. Someone high enough to override protocol. Holt nodded once. And someone who had access to data most pilots never see. Emily tightened her grip on the paper. Why wasn't this in the report? Because the moment Aaron touched down there, every trace of the detour vanished. Holt's voice dropped. Scrubbed. Modified. Erased. Take your pick. A coldness crept beneath Emily's skin. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls too close. What was at those coordinates? She asked. Holt hesitated, not out of uncertainty, but as if weighing how much truth to give her at once. A private research outpost, he said finally. Unofficial. Unregistered. Operated by a group we've been trying to identify for years. Contractors? Maybe. Holt's jaw tightened. Or someone pretending to be. All we know is that advanced signal equipment was moved in and out of that site without any authorization from the Air Force. The words hit her like a blow. Signal equipment. Frequencies. Interference. Hidden transmissions. Exactly the kind of technology capable of hijacking a pilot's channel mid-flight. Emily felt her throat tighten. And Aaron was sent there alone? He wasn't supposed to be alone, Holt said quietly. His co-pilot called in sick that morning. A coincidence I no longer believe. Silence filled the space like thick fog. Emily stared at the coordinates again, the numbers carving themselves into her mind. Why give this to me? She finally asked. To a sergeant? You could hand this to OSI, or to the investigative board. You could. They already have enough walls between themselves and the truth, Holt said sharply. I need someone who isn't part of their politics. Someone who won't bend because it's easier. Someone who already has skin in the game. Her pulse stumbled. You think that's smart, sir? Putting this on the sister of, I think it's necessary, Holt cut in. And I think you're the only one who's looked at that data with the right eyes. His voice softened. Aaron trusted you more than anyone, Emily. And whatever he discovered out there, whatever he was trying to tell us, you may be the only person who can finish what he started. Emily's breath faltered, just for a moment. She looked down at the drive again, its cold metal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She slid it into her pocket and folded the paper carefully. What do you need me to do? She asked. Holt exhaled slowly as though, relieved she'd asked the question he already knew she would. You leave tonight, he said. No uniform. No official transport. You go alone. Her stomach tightened. Alone. If anyone is watching, Holt replied, a team will draw attention. But a single intelligence sergeant traveling off duty? That barely registers. He moved toward the door, pausing before opening it. Once you reach the coordinates, you'll find an access hatch buried near the ridge. Beyond that, he hesitated, the first real hesitation she'd seen from him. I don't know what you'll find. Or who. Emily felt the weight of her brother's notebook pressing against her thigh. The same notebook she carried everywhere. Aaron had always been meticulous. Every frequency logged, every anomaly recorded, every instinct he trusted written in organized shorthand. Maybe something in it would guide her now. Sir, she said quietly, if someone erased Aaron's tracks, if someone sabotaged his mission, then they'll come after me too. Holt nodded. That's why you'll take this. He reached into his jacket and placed a small object in her hand, an old military dog tag on a thin chain. The edges were worn, the engraving faint, but readable. A.C. Carter. Oneg, U.S. Air Force. Her throat closed. This was recovered from his flight vest, Holt said softly. The one item that didn't make it into the memorial case. Emily closed her fingers around it, the metal warm from Holt's touch, heavy with meaning. I don't expect you to forgive what happened, Holt added. But I expect you to be ready for the truth when you find it. Emily nodded once. I will. Holt opened the door, letting the muted hallway noise seep in. Get your gear, he said. Leave base in 30 minutes. She took one step out, but his voice stopped her. And Sergeant Carter? She turned. His expression was grave. Whatever Aaron discovered, people have killed to hide it. If you continue down this path, there may not be a way back. Emily's gaze didn't waver. I'm not turning back. A faint, grim acknowledgement touched Holt's eyes. I didn't think you would. Emily walked away, each step quiet but certain, the hall stretching ahead like a tunnel towards something she couldn't yet see, but could feel pulling her relentlessly forward. Tonight, she would follow the coordinates. Tonight, she would begin to uncover what her brother died trying to warn them about. Tonight, the truth would no longer stay buried. The road into the Rockies stretched like a dark ribbon carved through endless pines, the mountains rising ahead in jagged silhouettes against a moonless sky. Emily drove with the headlights dimmed, the hum of the engine blending into the muted roar of wind sliding along the truck's windows. Every mile took her farther from the security of the base, and deeper into the uncertainty that her brother had stepped into before her. She checked the coordinates again, the folded paper resting on the passenger seat beside Aaron's notebook. The metallic drive Holt had given her lay tucked into her breast pocket, cold against her skin. It felt like a key she was still learning how to use. The dog tag he'd returned to her, Aaron's dog tag, hung around her neck, the weight of it grounding her every time doubt tried to claw its way in. By the time she reached the fire road branching off the main highway, fog had begun to curl across the ground. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches interlocked overhead, blocking what little starlight filtered through the clouds. The temperature dropped sharply as she climbed, frost forming at the edges of the windshield. She killed the headlights and continued slowly, letting the tires crawl over the dirt path. The truck's suspension groaned under the strain of the incline. A few times she thought she saw movement in the trees, shadows shifting, branches swaying without wind, but she forced her eyes forward, keeping her focus on the coordinates blinking steadily on the GPS device she'd programmed manually. The road ended abruptly at a narrow trailhead. She parked the truck between two massive boulders, hoping the dark would conceal it from aerial view. Then she grabbed her pack, slung it over her shoulders, and stepped out into the frigid air. Silence pressed in around her immediately. No insects, no distant engines, just the soft hiss of wind filtering through pine needles. She pulled her hood up and started up the trail, her flashlight dimmed to its lowest setting. The path was steep, littered with loose shale that slid beneath her boots. The climb was punishing, the cold sharp enough to sting her lungs, but she didn't slow. Every step carried her closer to whatever Aaron had been diverted to see, and whatever someone didn't want the world to know. 30 minutes into the ascent, the GPS chimed softly. She was close. She paused, scanning the trees, letting her senses stretch outward. The forest felt too quiet, not peaceful, but watchful. She swept her light across the ground, searching for anything out of place. Then she saw it. A patch of earth too evenly packed. A line of stones that formed a shape almost too straight to be natural. And beneath a cluster of snow-covered branches, something metallic glinted. Emily crouched and brushed the snow aside. Her blood chilled. An access hatch, just like Holt said. Its surface was scratched, weather-beaten, as if someone had tried to disguise it, but didn't have time to finish the job. A thick locking mechanism held the hatch in place. She traced it carefully with her glove. Biometric. Military grade. Unmarked. This was no abandoned site. Emily pulled out the device she'd brought. A portable bypass tool designed for encrypted field locks. She pressed it against the mechanism and waited as its interface flickered through codes. After 20 seconds, it beeped. Access granted. Her pulse quickened. She grabbed the handle and pulled. The hatch opened with a deep metallic groan, cold air rushing upward from the dark below. A narrow ladder descended into what looked like a reinforced tunnel carved into the mountain. She stared into the blackness for a long moment, heart pounding. This was it. The place Aaron had come. The place someone had erased from every log and report. The place she wasn't supposed to find. She descended the ladder slowly. The air grew colder with every rung, the darkness thickening around her. When her boots finally touched concrete, she clicked on her flashlight. A narrow corridor stretched ahead, walls lined with tangled bundles of cables and dismantled panels. Dust coated everything, except for the center of the tunnel, where faint footprints disturbed the layer of grime. She knelt beside them. Fresh. Not hours old, but not more than a day or two. Someone else had been here recently. She stood quickly, senses sharpened, and moved forward with her hand near the holster at her hip. Her footsteps echoed softly. The deeper she went, the more the tunnel split into branching passages, each marked with faded signs and peeling paint. This wasn't a civilian research station. It had the bones of old military infrastructure, the kind built during the Cold War and quietly repurposed over decades. After 10 minutes of navigating the maze, she found it. A control room. Banks of abandoned monitors, circuit boards scattered across tables, cables dangling like severed arteries. Dust clung thick to the equipment, but one table stood out, clean, cleared recently, with a single device sitting in the center. A radio transceiver. The same model used for high-frequency burst transmissions. Emily approached slowly. Someone was sending signals from here, she whispered. She reached for the device and froze. A faint click echoed behind her. Metal against metal. A subtle shift of weight. The unmistakable sound of someone chambering around. Her breath caught. Don't move, a voice ordered from the shadows. Emily raised her hand slowly, her heartbeat thundering. The silhouette stepped into the dim light. A man, tall, clad in a dark tactical jacket, face partially obscured by the low hood of his gear. His stance was practiced, controlled, the muzzle of his rifle steady as it tracked her. Her pulse slammed hard against her ribs. He knew where she was. He knew she was coming. He had been waiting. Who are you? Emily asked, keeping her voice even. The man didn't answer. His eyes flicked briefly to the transceiver, then back to her. You shouldn't have come here, he said. His voice was low, roughened by cold and exhaustion, but unmistakably calm. This place wasn't meant for you. Emily swallowed, forcing herself not to look away. Then who was it meant for? The man's expression tightened. Your brother. The floor seemed to drop beneath her. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed deeper in the tunnel. Heavy, approaching fast. The man's eyes widened. They found you, he whispered. He stepped back into the shadows, weapon still raised. Stay quiet, he warned. And whatever happens, don't trust anyone who comes through that door. The lights flickered. The footsteps grew louder. Cold dread knotted in Emily's chest. Because she suddenly understood something with chilling clarity. She wasn't alone in this underground facility. She was being hunted inside it. And whoever was coming next didn't want answers. They wanted silence. The footsteps grew louder, multiple sets, heavy, synchronized, unmistakably tactical. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears as she scanned the dark room, searching for anything she could use as cover. The man who had confronted her had already disappeared into the shadows, leaving only a faint vibration in the air where he'd stood. She didn't know whether he was an enemy, an ally, or something in between. She only knew one thing. His warning was real. The tunnel lights flickered again, once, twice, then stabilized in a cold, sterile glow. Emily moved quickly, ducking behind a row of rusted equipment racks. Her breath steadied, quieted, her training sharpening her senses. She eased her hand toward her holster. The metal door at the far end of the control room groaned open. 3 figures stepped inside. Black tactical gear. Face shields. Weapons raised. Not standard military issue. Not contractors, at least not legitimate ones. Their movements were too coordinated, too silent. They swept the room with laser precision. Emily pressed herself against the cold metal rack, heart pounding but controlled. She listened as they communicated in hushed, clipped whispers, too low to decipher, but tense enough to convey urgency. One stepped closer to the center table, the one where the transceiver sat. He examined it, adjusted a dial, and muttered something that made the others tense. Whatever they were looking for, it wasn't Emily. It was the signal. The same signal that had hijacked her brother's final transmission. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She tightened her grip on her weapon. But she didn't move. Not yet. The tallest operative turned toward one of the side tunnels. Check the north corridor, he said, his voice distorted by the mask. If she's here, she didn't come alone. Emily's blood ran cold. They were expecting someone else. Someone like the man who'd warned her. Someone who'd vanished into the darkness. Two operatives broke off and headed down the left passage, boots barely making a sound. The third remained, standing guard, scanning the shadows with practiced intensity. He paced slowly, his weapon angled and ready. Emily's muscles tensed. She knew she couldn't stay hidden for long, not in a room with open sight lines and no secondary exit. She needed to move. She needed a distraction. Her eyes darted to the console beside her, old, but still wired. A few exposed cables dangled like veins. She checked her pocket. A spark tool. Small. Hot enough to burn through insulation. Loud enough to draw attention. She glanced at the lone guard again. He'd turned his back. 1 second. 2. Emily flicked the tool, pressed it to the cables. A shower of sparks exploded. The lights overhead snapped into darkness. Shouts erupted instantly. Emily didn't wait. She rolled from behind the rack just as the guard opened fire, bullets slicing through metal where she'd been crouched. She sprinted toward the opposite tunnel, keeping low, using overturned crates as cover. The emergency lights flicked on, dim red, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Alarms began to wail, echoing through the underground maze. Footsteps thundered behind her. She didn't look back. She vaulted over a broken console, slid beneath a fallen beam, and ducked into the narrow corridor ahead. The walls vibrated with the force of pursuit. The operatives were fast, too fast. Whoever they were, they'd been trained to hunt in confined spaces. Emily's lungs burned as she ran, her flashlight bobbing across the tunnel walls. She turned sharply, slipping into another passage, but skidded to a stop as she reached a dead end. Damn it! She spun around, weapon raised. The first operative rushed into view. Emily fired. The round hit center mass, knocking him back, but his armor absorbed the impact. He staggered, but didn't fall. He raised his rifle. Emily dropped to one knee and fired again, this time into the exposed joint between his shoulder plates. He crumpled. 2 more. Shadows lunged into the corridor. Emily ducked behind a concrete pillar as rounds tore chunks from the wall beside her. She steadied her breathing, remembering Aaron's voice from years ago, teaching her how to shoot beneath panic. Slow. Steady. Choose your moment. She rose just enough to fire, but a hand grabbed her from behind, pulling her into a hidden side gap in the wall. She nearly struck, but the voice stopped her cold. Quiet. The man from earlier. Her pulse spiked. You. He put a finger to his lips. Move. He guided her through the narrow passage, barely wide enough for one person. Emily stumbled after him, the sound of gunfire growing more distant as they wove through the darkness. The passage opened suddenly into a maintenance shaft. He dropped down through a hatch ladder. Emily followed, boots hitting metal rungs. They descended into a deeper chamber, one even older, the air thick with dust and the faint smell of machine oil. The man motioned for her to stay low. He scanned the shadows before speaking. You triggered the failsafe, he said. They'll seal this facility in less than 10 minutes. Emily's heart pounded. Who are they? Not who you think, he replied. And not who you want them to be. His face was still obscured by shadow, but she could make out the tension in his jaw, the weariness of someone who had been running for far too long. Start talking, Emily demanded. My brother came here. He intercepted a signal. What were you doing with him? The man didn't flinch. Trying to keep him alive. Emily's breath caught. Then why did he die? The man exhaled slowly. Because he figured out what they were building here. And he refused to stay silent. Emily stepped forward, voice trembling with anger she'd fought to bury. What were they building? He lifted a damaged console from the floor, turning it toward her. It was old, cracked, but the logo on it was unmistakable. A private defense tech corporation. One with deep government ties. One whose name appeared in countless classified reports. Emily felt her stomach twist. They built a frequency weapon, the man said. A prototype capable of hijacking secure channels, redirecting transmissions, creating false signals, crippling aircraft without leaving a trace. Emily's pulse slammed painfully. They tested it on Aaron's flight. He nodded once. He wasn't supposed to survive the test run, but he did. He fought the signal. He broke through, and he said one name before the transmission cut. Emily leaned in, every nerve alight. Whose name? The man's eyes met hers, haunted, heavy. Yours. The room seemed to tilt. Emily stumbled back, air punched from her lungs. Mine? Why? Why would he? Because he knew you'd find the truth, the man said. He knew they couldn't bury what he discovered, not if you kept digging. And they knew it too. Her mind raced, fragments clicking into place like a puzzle she'd never known she was building. The erased logs. The unauthorized detour. The buried facility. The manipulated frequency. The warning in Aaron's voice. It all pointed here. To this underground labyrinth. To this man who knew too much. To a weapon capable of rewriting the final moments of anyone who crossed its path. Emily felt the weight of Aaron's dog tag against her chest. Her voice broke into a whisper. Why are you helping me? The man hesitated. Then he removed his hood. Emily's breath froze. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't an operative. He wasn't a ghost from the dark. He was Liam Mercer, Aaron's closest friend, the co-pilot who had called in sick the morning of the detour. The man she'd trusted all her life. The man she had mourned as quietly as her brother. But he wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be alive. Emily's voice cracked. Liam? His expression tightened with guilt, so raw it stung. They think I'm dead, he said. And if you want to survive long enough to expose them. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You'll have to disappear too.